I'm your host, Jason Downs. We're here with Barbara Wilson. As always, a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here and talking about mental health, especially during our celebration of Women's History Month. We're focusing on women today, and we're celebrating them, and we are thanking them for all that they do, and we are acknowledging that it's a difficult job to be a woman, especially a mother. So we wanted to dive more in to women out there who are mothers, especially of school-age children, and professionals of school-age children, as it's been especially challenging during COVID. And you had touched on that before our break, and I just wanted to circle back to that and hear about some of the, I guess, problems that you've been helping women through, and what issues they have come up against. And I mean, I can imagine that, for instance, you mentioned a professional woman, and how does she juggle the changes in schedule? How does she hold down a job? But you also mentioned how it can affect a marriage. So I'm sure you've come in contact with all those things. So I would be interested to hear more about that, as I'm sure our listeners would.
Well, thank you for that. I again, it has to do with giving voice, and what I'm seeking to do right now is to give voice to many of the women that I see or have seen in my private practice, some of whom live here locally. Many of those mothers have struggled to make a decision on what is best for the family versus what is best for their career, with the full knowledge that if they step away from their career, they will have grave difficulty, if ever, getting back to where they are right now, because they're already on a track. Maybe they're in middle management, but they're, it took them a while to get to where they are. And if they stay where they are, then they're going to move to the next level. If they step away, then they're not going to move to that next level anytime soon, if ever. So it's a really gut-wrenching decision on a professional level, but also a gut-wrenching decision of what if I don't? My
Would a
children...
man have the same difficulty if he were to step away? Or is that not even really being considered
But less likely. If a man chooses what's called the mommy track in popular, some publications refer to it that way. If I have known men that have done that, and yes, they do lose their place in line in the promotability line. They're not as promotable because if they're in a meeting at 5:00, it's like, oh, I've got to go pick up my kids from childcare. Gotta go, you guys. The difference, though, with men doing it and women doing it is usually when a man does it. Not always, but usually when I see a man who is the single parent or the primary caregiving parent, there are usually some extenuating circumstances that are readily apparent to everybody in his circle, like, oh, his wife just died, or his wife has some dreadful disease that's incurable right now. And usually that guy also has a cast of supporting characters, like, women will flock to him and say, oh, look at him. He's raising children all by himself. Let's make him a pie. Or let's call him up and see if he needs somebody to watch the kids so he has a break.
A woman wouldn't normally have that same support.
They do not get the same support. No, in general, no. If women don't come with their own support system kind of baked in, like their sister, their mother, their auntie or somebody, that is really a lot of the problem that I have seen with the women here in Santa Clarita. Is like they have no network for childcare outside of family. Well, family only goes so far. And what if you have multiple children? Well, if you have one child, yeah, I can tell you from personal experience, when I had one child, that child was like an appendage. If I decided to go to the beach, I just went to the beach. Come on, we're going to the beach. And we did. But then when you have two children, everything, oh no, now you got a plan. And so if you have two or more children, now you really have to plan.
Which is difficult enough to do if you aren't struggling with depression or with, any other number of mental challenges. Mm-hmm. So what in the world does a woman do who finds herself, especially like you pointed out, these past couple of years, suddenly having to play teacher
yes.
on top of mother, on top of wife, on top of...
And never getting out of the house, except when you get out of the house, you have to take the children with you. Have to. There are no other options. It's not like, okay, I'm going to take the kids to childcare or they'll go to school and then I'll run to the market and I'll get all this stuff done and I'll be back to pick them up. Over the last 2 years, there frequently has not been that choice. Mm-hmm. So it's either you're with them in the house, you're with them in the backyard so that they can get some air, or you're with them everywhere you go, they are with you. And depending on the age of the children, it may be that you hardly even get to take a shower without the children. I have one mother that even in therapy sessions, the kids were crawling all over her. She was like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, I've had kids. It's okay. But I wonder how it's affecting you. She said, she just started to cry. She said, I would love to just have some time to myself, even an hour.
Speaking of, if you're listening to this right now and you're experiencing some of the things that Barbara is describing, please call. She'd love to talk to you, 661-298-5487. I think she even wants to give you a gift if it's if you feel like calling in, please do. Don't be shy. We will protect your identity, of course. So what other, again, as we think about Women's History Month, what other important issues are you finding that women in particular deal with in this day?
Well, of course, there's the whole economics of the situation. I've been mostly talking about women that are pretty professional, that are pretty high-powered from some people's perspective. But there are also women that are like first-line responders, that what we in my profession refer to as secondary trauma, that they see so much really awful stuff happening to other people, other children, and working very long hours, sometimes mandatory time, no time off, and then when do they rest? And when do they take care of their children? And what if they got exposed to COVID? Then what do they do? How do they negotiate that space with their family when they want to hug their family, or their kids are like, oh, mommy's home. Oh, no, don't come any closer. I'm going to sleep in the garage because I got exposed today. All of those dynamics occur. The long shifts, that I think is just really devastating. And we see that a lot in nursing, in law enforcement, in firefighters, to the point that I think correctly so, the County of Los Angeles has deemed some kind of special service for PTSD, without having people say they have it, but just say everybody gets therapy every so many times just 'cause. And I would like to see that broadened, because I think what somebody said, people are like cars, every so often you need to just take your car in for a tune-up. And what if we could look at mental health like that every so often you just need to go get a tune-up, get a checkup, and it just, get your wheels aligned, get your marriage aligned. We see this with seniors, back to depression. By the time people become 65, 70, 75 years old, my age, they've usually buried a few people, a few cats, a few dogs, and so maybe they lost a business, maybe they lost somebody close to them, and they don't see how there's enough time left to live for them to make that up, and so there's major depression. Sometimes we have retired couples. So man retires, wife retires. Now they're together all the time. Before, they were on a schedule. They got together for dinner and maybe watched a couple of TV shows and get ready for tomorrow. And they had days off. So they had that structure. In retirement, all of a sudden, they're together all the time. I cannot tell you the marital stress that I hear from married women that are like, oh my God, he's trying to tell me how to vacuum. I've been vacuuming all these years without his supervision. So this is something that goes on. A lot of people think, oh, if I could just get to retirement, life is going to be golden. Well, maybe it will. But it's a lot of togetherness and it's a lot of change. And again, I think therapy really helps. Not that I'm pushing therapy, but simply having people talk out loud about what the stresses are and admit, oh my gosh, I really don't like being around this person 24/7. Yeah, I need a break. And coming to terms, sometimes they really need to recalibrate and renegotiate the terms of their marriage, because if they've been married 50 years, the basis of, when they got married, what they agreed, well, I'm going to change the oil and you do all the stuff on the inside. Well, that was probably okay when she was 21. But now she's 65 and she's been making her own money. And she's like, I don't need to ask your permission to buy a loaf of bread. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm the man. Of course you asked my permission. Wives discover, oh, I don't have any of the passwords to any of our accounts. Is that okay? I'll leave them for you if I die. So there's no discussion about how to do things jointly in the realm of the finances, because that's the man's job, or it had been. So these are some of the stressors that happen that are I think, entirely fixable if they could just be willing to come to have a discussion about it.
Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about that more. We'll talk about what happens if you don't get treatment. Okay. We're talking to Barbara Wilson here. Feel free to call in and join the conversation, 661-298-5487. In the meantime, we'll be right back. Stay with us on KHTS 98.1 FM and AM 1220.